Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the first video for the National Model Railroad build-off that I'm planning to enter. As you can see, we're starting with the Valley Growers Association kit. It's just like any other Walthers kit. There are a few more parts to this, as there are 3 buildings instead of just one that would normally be in the kit. I will get the camera readjusted and start showing the build from here. I decided to start with the main elevator from the kit. I figured that it was going to be the most difficult and wanted to start with that to get it finished. And when I say difficult, I guess it's more of just time consuming, as there were a lot more parts to it with the window frames that needed to go in and the actual different angles of what was there for the elevator with the different levels on it. So as you can see, I went through and cut off all of the walls with my sprue cutters, and then I went through and made sure to file the edges so that they were smooth and they would be ready to be glued together. I've been working on getting the window frames put into the windows here, and also we'll get the door glued in for the rail loading area here in just a second. But I wanted to do something a little different with this kit and wanted the window frames and the windows to be broken out, or at least broken. To do that, I took my sprue cutters and just cut some of the window frames out with that to show damage to it. And then for the glass, I used my pin vise drill that I have and drilled a hole into the middle of the glass plastic and would use either my sprue cutters or my X-Acto to kind of start doing some cuts into the glass and then breaking it off. And I've got a couple of pictures that show that a little better coming up right here. The way the plastic for the glass sits in the kit, there's actually a recess in it. So it was really easy to have broken parts with pieces missing, as it all lined up accordingly to fit into those slots. The other thing that I wanted to do was create some spots that showed some of the elevator had been worn away and or the paneling had come off. And so this is me cutting in one of those spots. I'll put up a picture quick showing the rest of, I ended up doing 3 on the elevator itself. So that I'll get this picture up and then we'll continue with the One thing I did to add a little bit more detail to it was on the back side of the cutouts that I did. so the inside of the kit that when it's put together. I put some wood pieces to show the bracing that the sheet metal would have been applied to and then secured onto. And that this is just me attaching one of them, the pieces that I had, and felt that this would add just a little bit more detail to the kit. For the higher part of the elevator, I wanted to also add broken windows and frames to it. And so this is getting those pieces cleaned up and then getting the frames into it as well. Here's a couple of pictures showing what I ended up doing as a final product for that top piece and then the elevator before getting the roofs put onto it. Here is the elevator with the roofs put on and some painting on it. I used gunmetal gray for the main portion of the elevator and then just used silver for the roof panels. There were three things left for the elevator itself. The ramps that were going up to the truck loading facility part of the elevator, and then the actual shelter that goes over that as well. I did get these put together, and then I left the shed part unattached so that I could then weather the elevator itself before putting the shed onto it and then weathering it as well. And that will be shown a little later in the video. But this is just a quick overview of getting that shed built and then building one of the ramps as they were pretty much the same, just inverse of each other. I also wanted the wood railings that were on the ramp. I wanted them to be broken and kind of dilapidated as well. And so I just cut random spots here and there with the sprue cutters as well to achieve that. Here is a closer look of the ramps and also a hole in the roof that I wanted to try for that outbuilding. I also decided not to film building the other two structures of the kit, as they're just essentially rectangle boxes and it's easy enough to do that with the clamps and just get them put together. I also, with the storage bin, cut some grooves out of it, as you can see, and also the strapping that went around it. Just broke it here and there to show more of a dilapidated look to it, that it isn't being used right now, hasn't been used in a long time. And here is the little office building. I did the same thing with the windows, broke a couple of them, and then also drilled a hole in the bottom of the floor piece that's there. That way I could feed some lights up into it if I wanted to. I have some ideas with it, but we'll see how it goes. And then to wrap up the pictures are the base coat of color that I wanted to have for all of the buildings and the roofs, and even the doors that go on the side of the truck shed. And here is the reveal of the buildings and what they look like weathered up. As for the ramps, I only painted the railings, the base wood color that I have, and left the actual ramp itself unpainted, as I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with it yet and wanted to see it on the diorama as well. For the doors, I also am not sure if I want to have them open, closed, slightly open, and it's also slightly dependent on the ramp placement to be there to hold them in place. But that's the color that I used, just model air wood. And I'll go through the buildings one by one of what I did. For the little office building, I painted the inside with German gray to help with light bleed. And then, like I said, I drilled that little hole so that I could put a light up in it if I wanted. For the grain bin, I also used model air wood for the base coat on it. And I'm showing off a little more the details that I did to it, the cutting out of the paneling, and I scraped some parts off on it, and then the cutting of the bracing that went around it as well. I also decided to put a hole in the roof, and that was what I was showing. And then here is the grain elevator. You can't really see on the inside, but I did put some weathering in there. I grabbed my phone to try and use the flashlight on it, and it didn't really work out, but that's the way that the kits are looking right now. For the roof of the truck loading shed, I decided to use silver and then mix in some German gray with it. That way it was a little darker than just the true silver of what you see there, but it was also lighter than what the gunmetal gray is that I painted the main part of the elevator. As for the rest of the weathering that I did on these kits, I took some of that model air wood again and just sprayed a light coat around the entire building just to help dull it down a little bit. I then went over that with orange rust and targeted some certain spots that I felt would be rusting out or where I just wanted to have darker rust streaks to it. And then once I got that base coat for the rust spots on, I took light rust and thinned it out and sprayed it where I had already targeted and did just a little bit here and there where I didn't. And then I also thinned it down just a little bit more with the airbrush thinner and did a light misting around the entire model just to also help get that sheen down and dull it down a little bit. And then to finish it off, I used dark rust and again targeted the spots where I had already targeted, and also just did it here and there to give a darker spot to it that I felt would be there for the rusting on it. And then I did take a brush and painted some light rust wash onto some spots here and there to do a little bit more streaking. Hopefully you found this video enjoyable and maybe have seen something that you could use in your modeling. I don't want to quite give away the master plan for what I'm doing yet, but as you can see, the buildings are going to be very worn down and dilapidated. So I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to continue to see what I'm going to do with this entry. And as always, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.